we can get started. And I like the fact that you said it's conference season because that's actually what I wanted to talk about. And when I come and approach the conversation, I don't come as the expert. I come as more of a student, forever learner. And the conversation, of course, is going to be open. I do have like a very quick like slide deck that I just put together in minutes with the help of AI. So I didn't really get a chance to fact check everything, but the resources are available. And I know that this is a conversation that came up before, which is what are the expectations around vendor season and conferences, and from the perspective of the organizers versus the patrons that are attending, prices that go along with that. What is fair pricing? What is equitable access? So that's what I wanted to talk about. And I know that Elvis mentioned before, um, around the like Juneteenth conference, there were a lot of people who said they wanted to support, but there weren't a lot of people who supporting. So a lot of that is what I've been hearing, ears to the ground and hearing about the feedback and people who feel like they are being taken advantage of and exploited because of the conferences and the vendors, and not to come of it from a pessimistic mindset, but just what can we do to educate ourselves and think about it from all perspectives so that moving forward, we have that insight and that helps inform what we do if we put on a conference like this or think about it from other people's perspective who are attending or vending at your event. We can't please everybody. I do know that to be true, but I'm eager to dive into the conversation. Of course, there may be people that come and trickle in. It's a lot of our bots and um, AI meeting note carriers and all of those things that are in the room, but that's okay. I am first and foremost gonna talk a little bit about who am I because I don't feel like I've had a chance to like fully explain that. There's been bits and pieces. I'm always in the room with my kids back behind me, so I feel always flustered and rushed. But also going back to what Fed said before, you never know how this is going to be disseminated out. So it's always good practice, especially with my podcaster's hat on, to speak as if it's the first time people are meeting you. So I'm going to share my screen if I can share my screen, and then we'll get into the presentation in about 5 minutes after I say a bit more about who I am and what I do. Um, Sharing is not turned on. Fed, I know you said you're busy running around.
What's up?
Okay,
What's the question?
perfect. Got it.
Yeah,
Nope.
there you go. And I do have an intern kind of monitoring if there's anybody that's in the chat or anything pops up. So I'm just
Perfect.
actively training a bunch of people. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. I have a few open tabs, sorry. But I am DaniMarie, as my social media and brand personality, but I'm also Danielle, my government name, Danielle Perkins. And I am what you might consider a digital strategist, systems builder, the person you call when you're doing everything, but nothing feels organized. I work a lot with early starters, business startups, podcasters, people who want to use and leverage AI but have no understanding or knowledge of how to get started. So that's more of my thing, working as a freelancer. I primarily front facing do a lot of podcasting stuff. So when I got started in podcasting, that was during the pandemic at a time for me where I lost everything. My background is in customer service, everything from working in insurance and billing to working a regular restaurant. So there was never a time pre-COVID that I wasn't working multiple jobs at once. And during COVID, I was a new mom working by night for Pioneer Human Services as a resident monitor, clock off, and I had about an hour before I needed to clock back in remotely at home working for the unemployment claims office. None of those jobs were jobs built to last. And so they laid me off amongst other layoffs during that time. I got my little severance package. I applied for unemployment even after working with them. And I took the SEAP program, Self-Employment Assistance Program. And that was when I got into a few incubator programs, learning about starting your own business, tried my hand at a few different things. But what felt sustainable for me at that time was just speaking from my personal experience of going through that change, that pivot, working from the corporate space, having to move into something else, choosing podcasting because at that time, like I said, losing everything, newly becoming a mom, a single mom at that. And my father would pass away the day after my son's first birthday. So a lot of angst, a lot of changes. I went to podcasting, like a space where I can share all of those things that were fresh and try to sift through who am I now? What will I do going forward? So the first ever podcast I did was with my mother, which we called the Mother and Daughter Duo podcast. At some point, that became very comfortable for me. And I did like five different shows speaking to like upwards of 20 plus people in a week. And then that became who I was, a coach, speaking more to how can you do the same thing? How can you get started? If you are a business owner, how can you share more of your personal story to invite more people in? How could podcasting be the funnel to your product ladder, the other things that you do, whether that's consulting, whether that is you have digital products? With podcasting, you can essentially do like eight different monetization strategies to expand what you're doing. Some people do podcasting full time, some people do it part time along with their corporate jobs, but that's who I am now. But before, like I said, working a lot in customer service, a lot of working and giving my volunteer time to other organizations. For instance, the Tacoma Urban League of Young Professionals. So at that time, no children. I was able to travel with Tulip, attend various conferences around the US, and as an executive board member, just learn about what does it mean to be a young professional? What does it mean to get down to the legislation side of things? What does it mean to be an activist? Also with the Clover Park Technical College Foundation Board. So as a graduate and alumni, I decided I would plug into the foundation board, sit as an officer there, learn more about endowments and fundraising. I was also one of two seats on a statewide community and technical college steering committee. So I would travel to the different community and technical colleges and really just be an advocate for the student body and then report back to the Capitol. So I did a lot of that, volunteered a lot of my time up until the time that I got pregnant and had children, and then lost and had to reset and reshift. But I'm always boots and ears to the ground, listening to what people have to say, trying to advocate for other people. I like to be like in the background, don't mind being front and center, but a lot of times, especially in this big age, I like to be in the background and observe and help out from the sidelines. And I don't necessarily need to be front and center. Um, that said, I volunteered for the Juneteenth event here in Tacoma, which I thought went well. I liked that they had the new location. They were at the LeMay Car Center, I'm sorry, Car Museum. And so they had the vendor booth area, which was adjacent to the car show. I did attend as a patron last year. Last year, my mind is slipping me, but it wasn't at that location. Um, and so, as a volunteer, hearing people's perspective, both from the vending side and then people who were patronizing the event, there wasn't a lot of space for sitting, right? So you had to congregate outside on the outskirts. If you got yourself a nice little plot on the grass up the hill, which was hard for people like my mother, who's older and doesn't want to climb up steep hills to have sitting room. And then there was sitting room right front and center to the stage. And I'm talking about the Tacoma Juneteenth event. And from the vendor booth side, like I heard some other people say, maybe people traveled around the outskirts but didn't necessarily travel in the middle. And then if you were someone who traveled only on the outskirts. You spent your money with the first business that you saw. You didn't really travel in and roam around first. Then you didn't spend money with the other vendors that were maybe in the middle. So there were some people that didn't get the business. And there were some people also across social media who said that it was just way too expensive. So let's talk about that. I'm going to also share very quickly before we get in the presentation, and I hope you guys could see this. Um, this is a platform that I built in terms of podcasting for resources. So Plan to Podcast is my baby. This is my business. This is a community hub for all of your resources if you're interested in podcasting. Another thing I'm very passionate about is very similar to what we do here, Podcast Peeps. It's my small community of podcasters that show up every Saturday, 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And what we do that's different but similar is we also invite guest speakers to join us and facilitate for the hour. So people who are not necessarily just a part of Podcast Peeps, but will go out and find people who are well versed in advertising and marketing and then invite them to the group. Or if they have a platform for podcast services or podcast products, we invite them to speak to my niche audience. Then something that I want to do with BOBE as someone who sits as an executive board member for the marketing side is repurpose that content into blogs. So I want to share this with you so you guys get the vision of what the branding and marketing team for BOBE is trying to do. So every person that speaks, we give them the spotlight. We also, this was our guest speaker. We repurpose that content into video and blog, and then we have clips and everything like that that we share out as well. And that can also go on to podcast RSS feeds and something that just feels more structured. Not all of this is front facing either. So that's another thing that I really want to emphasize for BOBE. We could really be doing a lot when we have guest speakers, but I know some people just like the things the way they are. So I just want to drop that in your lap so you can sit with it. But I do think it's worthwhile that when people show up and if we have guest speakers, we find ways to extend that information out and then invite more people into the fold because now we're not just speaking amongst ourselves and it doesn't feel insular. We're bringing other community members in and then showing them the value of their voice and how far it could go when we disseminate the information across various platforms. But let me stop sharing and then pull up this slide deck. And feel free if you have anything that you want to share to come off mic and share it. Okay. Vendor expectations, festivals, and conferences. This is a hopefully balanced conversation about what vendors should expect and what event organizers can reasonably promise. So, why this conversation matters. The tension is real, but the answer is rarely one-sided. So, vendors are asking, what did I actually pay for? Was there enough traffic? Was my audience there? Did my placement hurt me? Did my sales justify the investment? From the organizer's perspective, they're thinking about venue costs, permits, security and staffing, marketing and programming, the crowd flow, weather plans, sponsors, vendors, and hundreds of other details unbeknownst to many of us. And then our jobs today is to define reasonable expectations before money changes hands and recognize that event success and vendor success are related but not identical. So just to sum it up in that question at the very bottom, which I can't exactly see, what would be a fair, transparent vendor relationship? What is it? What is fair for both sides of the coin? Local case study, again, my personal anecdote, my personal experience at the the Juneteenth event in Tacoma at the LeMay America's Car Museum. So this was a free public celebration of an all-day event. Festival included vendors, entertainment, community resources, and a first annual car and bike show. Now, 2025, organizers reported 20,000 attendees and 160 vendors. 2026 vendor signup was capped at 150 spaces. And it was at a park, and I forget the name of that park, but it was adjacent to a place where the police is housed. I think here on the south side, south or east side. I still forget the name of the park, but my sons and I call it the Pirate Ship Park, which also was prime real estate, a great location in my opinion. So again, I spent years volunteering hours, being boots on the ground. I've seen what it takes to put a festival on, and I've also heard from the vendors who participated. From the production side, the venue choice had logic, location, open space, and room to place the festival along with the car show. From the vendor side, some businesses felt what they paid for did not necessarily match the sales, visibility, or results that they experienced. To sum it all up in one question, can an event be well produced and still be a poor fit for a particular vendor? I think that it is both can be true. And so, from the event side, organizers are looking to find a workable venue, build safe crowd flow, fit stages, vendor activations, vehicles. So, the parking is another big thing. And overall, they want to, at the very least, keep people satisfied. The vendor lens, they want to recover booth and operating costs. They want to reach people likely to buy. They want to get enough visibility and traffic. They want to convert that attention into sales or leads and decide whether the event was worth repeating. Now, that's like I said, I heard amongst some chatter in a few groups who had a lot of complaints about the parking. So, what they didn't realize was people were charging, excuse me, $50 to park, but that had nothing to do with the event organizers. Some people, because they were there at the Tacoma Dome station, they opened another space for parking that made it convenient for parking, but were charging $50. But of course, a lot of that blame and onus was shifted to the event organizers. Then also, again, going back to the setup, um, and it just being kind of hard to navigate the space. A lot of people who were right there front and center at the stage to sit were kind of infringing upon the people who had a booth there. You're right there in front of the crowd. The hot sun is beaming on you. A lot of people had tented areas. Some people did not. Hey, baby, one second. So that's just some of the feedback from Juneteenth again. Vendor fees vary dramatically in our region. So this part I had no chance to fact check. The Seattle Juneteenth event, I'm learning there was no cost to vend. You needed to be an approved. No, not yet. Mommy's on an important call. Seattle Juneteenth, no cost to vend. Approved vendors are offered a tent, table, chairs, table covering, along with website and social media promotion. That's another thing that I think we need to take a look at. Um, Website is great, social media is great, but it doesn't always convert, right? And so looking into what are those numbers? What does that traffic look like for your website? Those are questions I think we need to ask before we decide we want to spend our money with um, as a vendor with some of these businesses. What was last year's traffic? What did last year's numbers look like? Um, Parks Tacoma, they have an opportunity to vend there. The application, from what I'm learning, is $10 plus the vendor fee, so about $75. There's only 35 spaces, 10 by 10 outdoor booth. Vendors bring their own setup. Electricity is not available. Sometimes there's a breakdown in communication from what I learned. So we have to learn to ask the right questions. Seafair food vending. Fair food vending. I'm not well versed on that, but it says $1,500 plus 15% of your sales for a 10 by 10 booth and $3,000 plus 15% of sales with a 20 by 20 booth. So vendor is responsible for their permits and they have to have insurance. That's a huge deal, but it might be worth it if you know of the traffic that comes from Seafair. So as the price rises, what should the value or the proof of value rise with? That's another question we should be asking ourselves. Um, I think one or two more slides. Organizer costs are real too. So a vendor fee is not automatic profit. 2026 Seattle special event fee examples are $92 for the application fee. I presume that when there's an application fee, you may or may not be accepted. I'm thinking more times than not, they're going to approve you, but just for all of the admin stuff and organizing it, they're charging you $92. $250 minimum administrative fee, so separate from the application fee. Excuse me. $25 per commercial sales vendor, $92 an hour per required police officer. And that can be before parks, before fire inspections, street closures, insurance, staging, sanitation, sound, marketing. So there is a lot that goes into creating these events. I think sometimes on the vendor side of things and the patron side of things, we just show up and expect everything to just be free, willy-nilly, and just to go together seamlessly, not again thinking about everything that goes into the production of running these events. So sometimes we can put up these high expectations. And I guess rightfully so, it's okay to have standards and boundaries when you're spending your money to have a booth, but also extending grace, especially for us Black organizers and yeah, people who are starting because there's a lack of representation, because we don't see ourselves at some of these other conferences. So people are trying to spearhead and pioneer and create these events, and we're not going to get it all right the first time. So extending grace on both sides. But should events sell vendors an attendance number or explain the customer journey? I am one that believes in full transparency. So, like inviting people into the planning committees, allowing them to have a say so, even if they're not a part of the committee per se, but they're in the audience and they're giving their feedback a couple of months prior to the production, letting people know when they're going to purchase a vendor booth or they're going to basically have a vendor booth at your event. What does the price, what is the itemized pricing? Maybe not giving full disclosure, but at least saying, hey, this is why we calculated this number to be this way. I think having some open dialogue about that, even if they don't have a say in what the final costs are, but at least them knowing this is why I'm spending $500 to have a booth there. It's not just going to be put in somebody's pocket. Um, so what organizers should disclose before payment? Not guarantees. Information vendors can use to make a business decision. So audience, previous and expected attendance, who the event is built for. I've attended events before, and a lot of times people will sell you on, what happened a few years ago. And while that should hold some weight, that's not the full picture, right? Um, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But um, again, it doesn't mean like last year's success is going to be this year's success. The goal is to do better, but then also being very clear and transparent about, okay, this is, like I said, website traffic, social media traffic. This is the conversions, how many people are clicking and converting and buying tickets. And this is what our engagement is looking like, and be more clear about the promise. The vendor mix, number of vendors. I don't know if this is a thing, but if there's too many of this type of event, do people separate from this side to the other? Um, or are they kind of bunched in the same area? I don't know. It just feels like a lot of people could be competing. So letting people, at least the vendors, have a chance to know, okay, this is the other vendors that are on site that you could be competing with, having full disclosure about that. Placement and flow, how locations are assigned and dedicated shopping time. From what I learn and hear often is you only get the one window for you to set up. There's not a lot of build up for people who are coming to vend at your event. So you only know about, okay, we're going to open the doors for you to come and set up your booth the day before, but how much more, especially with like tools like a CRM tool and automations, can you be like giving people updates throughout the event, setting up the proper expectations, setting up emails before as you're getting people excited about attending and vending, and then giving them information about, okay, this is who's going to be in the building. This is what that looks like. What I do know is the Black Business Leadership Conference has been doing an outstanding job of that. Sometimes it doesn't fall in my inbox, but I'm someone that likes to check all parts of my inbox, the promotion side, the social media side, and my main inbox. And I know the BBLC is doing outstanding about the build up and leading up to. They just announced the keynote speaker through email. So I think that conferences and festivals should do the same thing when it comes to people who are vending, letting people know what the expectations are, not just doing social media marketing for the patrons, but also the vendors. Be also very clear about what is included and what is not included, not leaving it up for um, the person to just figure out, but a lot of times we disclose what is included, leaving out what is not included, and we expect people, adults, to be adults and know the difference. But sometimes people need that full transparency because sometimes we're not looking at our emails until the week of. And so the onus is on that person's part, but at least you've done your job by being very clear. So tent, table, power, Wi-Fi, parking, passes, security, and marketing. Also being very transparent about fees, booth fees, commission, processing, or permit charges, and then the risk, whether there's whether cancellations, refunds, what does that all look like? Okay, and I think this is the last one before we open it up for some questions and feedback. And what are your thoughts about the topic? What vendors should calculate before they say yes? Your true event costs. So the booth fee, the inventory, how long it takes you to set up, how long it takes for you to take down, the labor, travel, parking, equipment, permits, insurance, payments, fees, your time. 11 to 5 is a long time to feel like you just have to be stationary. And then you know, you can't really shut down your booth to go excuse yourself for the restroom. So then maybe you have to invite other people to help volunteer at your booth. And so finding a way to compensate people, a lot of times it's your friends and family. Um, but sometimes it's just yourself because people are not going to spend their volunteer time to help you for that amount of time in a day. Before you ask, is this audience likely to buy at my price point? How many sales do I need to break even? If sales are slow, can I capture qualified leads? Is my goal revenue, awareness, bookings, wholesale, or relationships? And do I have booth experience that can actually convert attention? One last thing that I'll share before I open it up to everyone. The reason why I know that people had a lot of things to say is because I made a post. Um, in one of the biggest groups that we have out here in Tacoma. So it's called the Tacoma Beauty and Business Expo. Some of you may have heard of it. But the post was sometimes you have to kind of tweak your prices ahead of these events. So yeah, maybe your regular price point, like for chicken and waffles, your plates are $30. But one thing that I've seen be executed very well, especially like at the Taste of Tacoma, is they have a $5 menu. So not only are you serving chicken and waffles for a full plate, $30, but maybe you have a piece of a chicken and a piece of a waffle with the Q-tip, right? In the center of it, and that's like $5. I don't know, but it's so that you're not just saying no and you're still able to make a little bit of money, right? And people are not just having to walk around you, but you're making your price point accommodating for people from both sides of the coin, from the $30 person and the $5 person. But also, you're not missing out on that opportunity to have a returning customer. So now you didn't turn them away and completely turn them off. because now you've offered something for $5 and they'll remember you when they get that other paycheck and they can pay you and go back to your business for the $30 full plate. Another thing that I notice a lot of times is people rely so heavily on social media to work for them at the event. So you should do more collecting of the emails and the text messages, not just have a post where you lead people to your social media, but you take their information so you can follow up with them. And then that goes back to the CRM tools again. Once they're in your pipeline, then you can periodically send them emails and, hey, there's a discount happening for this week if you stop by in person only or something like that. So a lot of times we just give them our social media, and not many times people are going to follow through on finding you on social media after there's just so much going on, so much activity happening at the event. But if you collect their information, then you have more control and you can reach out to them accordingly. That's enough of me yapping, I think, you guys. These are the questions I have for you, but anyone would like to come off mic and say anything? Or would you like me? Okay, perfect. Please, Cedric.
Or not, but you out of on that.
One second.
Can be
Let let
good.
your let your internet catch up because it was spotty for me.
I'm not even.
Okay, go
Do I?
ahead. I think
Okay,
it sounds good now.
okay. I was gonna say, I won't take up all the time, but what I'll do is, check, just kind of hit a few points. On the organization side, one of the things that vendors have to understand is the organizational side of it. Because a lot of time, the organizers, they're volunteers themselves. They're either volunteers that are doing it, on their own or in their free time, but they may also be business owners as well. And so you can really get down into the details that honestly, most people, they're not going to look at all that information, no matter how much work that you put into it. Yeah, it sounds nice to say, yeah, we can put a document up that shows why the price is the price. But the reality of it is most people are not going to look, that deep into the details. Just like, most of the vendors, they won't care that, hey, you personally spent, 30 days, 2 months, 6 months planning this, doing all of this, free service just to organize this. And it takes money. Like you talked about a CRM. A CRM costs money to use. So it's really a lot of that and time. Yes, would a lot of those things that to help streamline and make events more efficient, would they be nice? Absolutely. That takes money though. And so I tell people, if you have a problem with an event, then next year, join the planning committee, join the organizing committee so you can see all of the work that goes into it when, there's a committee of people and, there's a committee of 10 or 15, but in reality, only five are actually doing the work, and doing all that. And then from the vendor perspective, yes, you do want to attend conferences and events. You want to get value out of it. You want to get value, because your time is money. Your time, is resource that could be spent, back at your business or back at work, doing whatever it is. So for me, when I'm talking to businesses and I'm talking about conferences and events, I tell them to be very strategic about how they attend and when they attend events. And I kind of give them a good understanding or a good way to kind of look at things. And hey, look at the sales, look at the attendees. Is that your target audience? If not, this may not be the event for you. So they businesses have to understand, that really look at it. Don't just go because hey, you heard it's good or it's a good time. Really be strategic, about that because there's a good chance, especially in the state of the economy that we're in now, that you might not get any sales. You may get, a low amount of sales because just like you want to make money, people really don't want to spend money. So there's always that battle. So that's all I'll say, and I'll stop there.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I know another big thing, again, having my ears to the ground, and some of you guys may have heard some of this moaning, groaning, complaining, griping, and such. One of the biggest events happening right now is the Invest Fest hosted by Earn Your Leisure. Um, and people say that it's less about the learning and the experience and the networking, and now it's more of this the who's who, right? Who's popular. People have also complained, and this is me listening to a lot of different podcasters who will come back and report after the event. And I believe this is year 4 of them hosting Earn Your Leisure. The price doesn't match what they probably are selling for tickets, and then they also have to pay astronomical prices for becoming vendors at the event. Um, and I know there's a lot of people, right, who have been vendors, and they will, like this lady probably spent a good $100,000 just to set up her booth at InvestFest. So some people really get it, and then some people, all they're going to ever do is complain, right? And you can never make too many people happy. But it's always, I feel like, happening within our circle, our groups, that people have that type of complaints, or those type of complaints. It shouldn't be entertainment there. It be more focused on, the value and the event itself and the speakers. And then you'll have people complaining that it was lackluster and not fun, and there should have been more entertainment. So it's always something. I remember the mayor for Atlanta and EYL, they were just going back and forth between different podcast platforms because Earn Your Leisure felt like we're coming to Atlanta and we're not getting the support at the state level. We're not getting support from bigger organizations who can help fund and bring this together. And Earn Your Leisure just set a new record. So they have about 35,000 people attending this year. And so that is a lot of people attending. And I do think it's worth bigger entities coming together to support that effort. But instead, it's, these people are over there doing their thing, and we're over here doing our thing. And that was another reason why I thought this conversation would be good to have, is just, why do we do that to each other? But one of the questions I have is, how much responsibility belongs to the organizer for traffic and the vendor for conversion? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? How much responsibility belongs to the organizer for traffic and the vendor for conversion?
Having large scale events, I can't guarantee how many people are going to actually show up. So I can't guarantee traffic. I can advertise, I can market, but the same factors and variables that businesses have to take into account, organizers have to take into account. And so yes, I have to do everything that I can to get the people there, just as the vendors have to do everything within their power and everything within their wheelhouse to convert, those people that are there. It's not my job as an organizer to convert, your attendance into sales. That's part of business. And I think that's one of the things that we, as a small business community, I won't say minority, but just a small business community, we have to get away from some owes us something. Oh, I did this much, this, or I should have did this much. That's not it. And if I can just quickly go back to what you said before, with EYL in the state, there is a fundamental misunderstanding of expectations and what different organizations or agencies can and should do. Just because they're bringing 35,000 people, to the state, that means absolutely nothing. If you want these big dollar corporations, pitch them just like anybody else would. Go pitch the corporations. Don't expect, let's just take me, for example. Don't pitch me and say, well, I'm doing this. The state of Washington should give us or give me X amount of dollars because I'm doing this. But just because you think that's the way that it should work, that's not the way that it works. There are, once you get into government levels, there are laws and there's policies that, one, stop us from doing a lot of those things. Not to say that we we can't or we don't want to do it, but there are things in place that stop us from doing it. Especially when we're dealing with the minority communities, there's a lot of, obviously, I think we all know that what's going on. That, you know, if we were to do that, the lawsuits that would, come from that, and we're dealing with a lot of that here in Washington. So I just wanted to, put that out there as well. So thank you.
Fair, very fair. Touche. Hello, Dr. Tracy. I see your hand.
Good morning. Good morning. Are we talking about a particular event in general? Like, can you just give me a little bit more context?
We weren't speaking of any particular, well, I mentioned Juneteenth and I mentioned Seattle Seafair and EYL, but the overall conversation was just about the different expectations that vendors have since we are in conference and festival season. So it's overarching.
Got it. Great question. And hello. I love that question, and I think I've seen it now from both ends. I used to be in the corporate space and one of the senior Black people at both IBM and Disney and Microsoft. So they bring me into all the conferences, and lots of money was being spent. They got to show the Black people, the few of us, that were there. So I kind of saw a lot of investment. I've seen Microsoft, for example, during one of the years I was there, and I was president of the Seattle chapter of the Black MBA, and they came to the Black MBA conference. And at first I was like, did they spend $100,000? I'm like, that's a lot of money for a conference. The booth for Black MBA, and it definitely was not $100,000. But by the time we did all the things that we were doing and the investment and the people and all the things, it was a lot of money. And it was because of the ecosystem that the Black MBA has brought into organizations like Microsoft for years, this talent pool, right? So I do think it's a combination of, Black MBA, we host a conference, people expect there to be some brilliant Black people there. And over the years, even my school, the University of Florida, and I was the only Black person who graduated with a finance degree in my year. They send busloads of white people to the Black MBA conference because they know we have, hundreds of organizations that are actually hiring. And so that kind of, like you said, there's an expectation, and I've had very honest conversations. You can't stop white people from coming to the Black MBA conference, but Black MBA, those vendors have an expectation that they're going to, have as many, Black students and professionals as possible. So then we, as a national organization and leaders of the Black MBA, bringing people together, we started to do things like offer HBCUs a discounted fare, right? And go into and do it like a whole series of pushes so that the Black students who probably couldn't come on their own, now you got a lower rate and you got some other, amenities and other things. So I do think there's a responsibility. I think it's about if I had to put a number on it, I'd say it's probably about 70-30, really, because people are paying to be at your thing, right? There's an expectation that, they're going to have, people that are going to meet the demographics that you've identified. So I think that the person who's putting the thing on kind of has responsibility of filling the room, right? Because they paid to be there. Like you said, there was an investment. But right, both things. But once you're there, you're also competing against 200 other, vendors in the space. So you better show up, right? So I think that there's that accountability as well. And the one thing I know Jennifer Ness likes to say and Debrina likes to say is follow up is king. So you can meet 1,000 people or 200 people, and if you're not following up and closing it, that's the other responsibility of the person that's there. So I'm saying 70-30. I'll go to 60-40 now. So I think there's a lot of responsibility on both sides. But great question. I was actually trying to figure out, even now on the vendor side, I'm trying to figure out like what is a good use of my dollar. So now the Black MBA conference is going to be on the West Coast. And I have a business and, it's AI and it's for small businesses and entrepreneurs and blah, 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 and professionals. So I'm like, do I fly there? Like I'm kind of doing my own return on investment. And I know for a fact because of the attack on Black everywhere and all the things, and the fact that the conference is only on the West Coast every 10 years, the 10,000 people that they would normally have on the East Coast conference is not going to be the same as the West Coast conference. I know that for a fact, right? Because we used to be able to take a train from Philly and DC and those kind of, all those spaces. So the Black, where there's a deeper Black, community, it's going to look different and feel different. And I know the Atlanta president was like, hey, dude, asking our interim president at the national level, why are you guys doing it on the West Coast? First of all, this is booked years in advance. Given the attack on Black, why are you doing it on the West Coast when you know it's going to be lower attendance? And basically, like I said, commitments have been made and all that. But these are major considerations, because the attendance is absolutely going to be less. She said, I've been to every conference for the last 27 years, and I got a conflict, and I won't be there this year. This is the past Atlanta president, and I'm still weighing my odds. I haven't booked my flight yet, and it's only $150, because then you got the room, and you got this, and you got that, and then what's the return on investment? I get to meet amazing people, and it's a hallelujah moment. Like you said, it's a good time for sure. And it's a leadership development and it's professional development, but it's an assessment that needs to be done from a return on investment. Now, as the vendor, do I have the funds to go? And if someone's paying me to go, I'm in. If I got to come out of my pocket, I'm out. That's kind
Right.
of plans. Yeah.
Right. Especially a lot of times we don't have a lot of that stuff happening here on the West Coast. So most of the time, in my experience, we are the ones having to travel. And whereas other people could just drive a couple of hours, we got to do a lot to get to what we need across country. Anyone else as we come to a close? And thank you all for listening and offering your personal insights and giving contributions to this conversation. Anyone else? I noticed some other
Yeah,
people trickled in. Go ahead.
I can say something. My headset's gone off.
Thanks.
Hold on. Yeah, for me, the example that came to my mind. So I worked in consulting, previously a major partner to Microsoft, and they would have these conferences that were, high profile, but because the company Accenture would be the one hosting, and then they would bring, all these other entities or in the consulting landscape to come in. It was really just more meet and greet, and the returns would be seen later, nothing would necessarily come out of that particular conference at that time, but but just making the connections, I guess, and so on. But being a big name consultant, they were sought after generally for companies that would have, big tech challenges in this case. But the other example, I am involved a lot in the philanthropic space. And so the conferences I go to that are for philanthropy, where you have like 20, 30,000 people coming who are just, here just uniting for good, projects, whether it's, clean water in third world countries, or helping, like this is the Rotary International, they built the Boys and Girls Club, in Seattle. That's the Rotary Boys and Girls Club. They have a lot of things they do locally, internationally. But my point is people travel, pay a lot of money to go to these conferences, and then pool their monies together to build schools and do things, and a lot of things that they do. And people still feel like it's worth, this year it was in Taiwan, and I got up and booked a ticket and went to Taiwan for this conference. And so I think there's a, way people generally want to participate and be around like-minded people. And whether the gains are immediate or just sort of emotional, I think that's what you have to tap into. Because I wondered, I was like, what is it that makes, 30,000 people travel? 2 years ago, it was in Singapore, and I never miss. And last year we were in Canada, 30,000 people. So anyway, but that's more like a question for me, like what would make 30,000 people, and next year it's actually it's in Barcelona, Spain. And people are already booking their flights, and you have people from all over the world that come for this nonprofit philanthropy conference. So anyway, that's it. I'm muting again. Thank you.
Thank you, Marsha. I appreciate that. I think a large part of it is community. At the same time, especially these young people, that could have been an email. That's how they feel. Um, I don't know. I don't know. It's a give and take. And then, I mean, like I've seen questions circulating. Would you much rather have $100,000 in cash or would you like to sit across from Jay-Z? Most people would say you should want to sit across from Jay-Z because he can offer you a lot of insight. But a lot of people don't value relationships the way they used to either. A lot of people in the comments, and this is just social media stuff, but a lot of people would say, I'd rather have the $100,000 and feel like I can go do what I need to go do on my own and not need a Jay-Z to tell me, because what can he tell me? Anyhow, um, I'm not, I'm always looking from both sides of the coin. I'm looking at from everybody's perspective. I'm very diplomatic in that way. I'm just kind of always somewhere in the middle. So even though I spoke on like the EYL versus the mayor situation, I don't have a dog in the fight or any example. Just listening to everybody's perspective is what kind of inspires me to like speak up on certain topics, especially as a podcast. I'm just naturally curious in that way. But as we come to a close, this was the young lady. This is how much effort she put into her booth for Invest Fest. So you have all of the contractors, you have them building out. This is just her booth alone. Um, Everything from the digital side. Some people don't even allow you to have electricity, so I don't know how that factored in, but this is her build, if you guys could see the screen.
Custom vinyl, custom stage, the whole 9 yards. Miss Business went full tilt on this.
You can't build wealth just by yourself. You need a team.
Wait till y'all see what she's doing I couldn't even figure it out at first. And now I'm walking around it, but I know that's only the tip of the iceberg.
Miss Business is in the arena. Meet me at
Some people couldn't even fathom putting that much money into a booth, right? Something that's going to be taken down after four days, because I think it's a 5-day event. But then also some people could see the value, and you know that's going to increase people coming to your business. People would be attracted to your business. It's a write-off and all of those things as well. So, but thank you again for allowing me to share. If you have any links or anything, please drop them. I will save the chat and try to get this sent out. Fed, did you have anything you wanted to say?